Welcome to the Tuesday, May 22nd, 2018 meeting of the Ashland Zoning Board of Appeals. We are being recorded but not broadcast live by WACA this evening. The meeting will be broadcast at some subsequent date and time. In accordance with the open meeting law, I would ask at this time that if there is anyone in the room who is recording the meeting, either by audio or video means, to please so indicate. Having received no response, we will move forward. First order of business, I guess, is to call the meeting to order and move on to the review of minutes from our last meeting, which occurred way back on January 9th of 2018. Josh had prepared a draft submitted to all of us. I had suggested some minor grammatical changes, which were emailed to all of us earlier today. Hopefully you all had a chance to receive them and review them. Any discussion about the minutes?
Look good to me.
No,
Okay.
I read the minutes and they're fine.
If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes of our January 9th, 2018 meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
A
Yes.
second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Okay. Moving forward, we have two issues concerning the open meeting law. The first one that we will deal with is the review and consider the response to an open meeting law complaint filed by Stephen Morgan on April 29th, 2018 regarding minutes or lack thereof from two meetings. We were furnished with a copy of the open meeting law complaint. Town Council has drafted a proposed response, which was submitted to us for review. The response is dated tomorrow, but obviously would not be submitted unless and until we review and, I guess, approve the response, or at least discuss the response of Town Council. To summarize, in essence, the complaint was filed with the Office of the Attorney General on or about April 29th, 2018, and indicated that the alleged violation were that there were no minutes from the September 26, 2017 meeting and our January 9th, 2018 meeting. The complaint that was submitted looks like it had originally also referenced a date of July 25th, 2017, but that appears to have been crossed out, at least on the copy that we were furnished with. Town Council's draft response, May 23rd, 2018, does indicate in substance that the minutes of all open and executive sessions shall be created and approved in a timely manner, and a timely manner will generally be considered to be within the next 3 public body meetings or within 30 days, whichever is later, unless the public body can show due cause or good cause for further delay. Noted that the minutes for the September 26, 2017 meeting were created and approved at our January 9th, 2018 meeting, and that the minutes for the January 9th, 2018 meeting have been approved tonight, which is the next meeting after our January 9th, 2018 meeting. That is the proposed draft response by Town Council in essence. And she concludes by requesting that there was no violation and requests that the matter be dismissed without further action. Any discussion, conversation? If not, I found the town council's draft response to the Division of Open Government at the Office of the Attorney General to be adequate and satisfactory, and I guess we probably should take a formal motion to approve the response and authorize town council to submit it.
Yes.
And having said that, do I hear such a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the this draft as a response.
Is there a second?
I second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Excellent. The second open meeting law complaint that we need to deal with is one that was filed back in April of 2017, and the Office of the Attorney General made a finding on May 14th of 2018. The complaint asserted that the board at its April 11th, 2017 meeting had discussed and taken action on items which were not on our posted agenda. You may recall that at that night there had been 2 hearings that had been scheduled on matters which were not able to go forward because of a failure to give proper notice to the community of the hearings, and the board then veered into a conversation about a draft decision of a prior matter which was provided to the board somewhat close in time to the meeting, and which had to be filed by a deadline of the following day. That meeting, that discussion about that decision, draft decision, was not on the posted agenda. In addition, after the discussion, Josh had left to make some changes and bring back the decisions, and one member of the board raised a subject that was not on the agenda, in which frankly was, I believe, cut somewhat short, and we didn't proceed further. However, the Office of the Attorney General concluded that with respect to the discussion concerning the draft decision, that the board did violate the open meeting law, that it was a matter which reasonably could have been anticipated to be dealt with at the April 11th meeting, and we did not list it in the agenda that was published for the community. With respect to the brief discussion concerning possible legal representation of citizens, the Attorney General's office found that that was an unanticipated matter, but noted that the board should refrain from discussing matters that were not before the board. I would suggest that the lesson that we all need to learn from this is that unless a matter is on our published agenda, we should not discuss it. That meeting, I would note, our chair at the time, Mr. Jack, had left the meeting, and I think somewhat unexpectedly, someone else, our vice chairman at the time, stepped in to run the meeting, and in any event, we clearly violated the open meeting law at that time, and so found, and we need to just make sure that we don't discuss and consider matters that are not on the agenda. I also think that we need to make sure that we have as complete and adequate an agenda prepared in advance. Josh has been doing that, and I think we generally stick to that. And I will do my best as chairman to make sure going forward that that is in fact what we do. Any discussion about it, comments about that? Okay, very good. Consider it all a lesson learned. Moving on to the next item on our agenda, and that is a hearing on an application for a special permit. The applicant is Alex Manhays de Silva. If I pronounce that name correctly, sir?
Yes.
Thank you. Let me start by reading the notice that has been published twice in accordance with the law with the Metro West Daily News. Alex Manhays de Silva, owner, has applied for a special permit under Chapter 282, Section 7.6 and 9.3 of the Ashland bylaws to allow for the use of the basement as an accessory family dwelling unit. The property is located at 368 Chestnut Street in the Residential A zoning district. A public hearing will be held on May 22nd, 2018 at 7 p.m. in the Board of Selectmen's room located at Ashland Town Hall, 101 Main Street, Ashland, Massachusetts. Parties wishing to be heard on this matter should submit comments to the ZBA ahead of time and/or appear at the time and place indicated above. Materials may be viewed at Town Hall during normal business hours or at ashlandmass.com/543/projects, period. Having said that, sir, do you want to come forward to the mic? Let me just note for the record that what has been filed with the board and what the board has before it tonight for consideration is an application to Zoning Board of Appeals received by the town clerk on May 2nd of 2018. A handwritten drawing entitled Back of the House. Another handwritten drawing that at the bottom has a caption, outside stairs. It appears to be a Google Maps online photo depicting the locus at 368 Chestnut Street. A handwritten page consisting of 7 numbered entries, a letter dated, or a memorandum dated May 15th, 2018, prepared by the Assistant Town Planner, Josh, addressed to the ZBA, pointing out the questions to which the handwritten response, and when I said 1 through 7, actually on the back page, it continues through number 13, referencing the questions that were answered to. Also, we have a letter dated May 15th, 2018, addressed to the Zoning Board of Appeals from Michael P. Crisafulli, Building Commissioner of the Town of Ashland. So those are the documents that the board has before it for consideration of the special permit for the accessory family dwelling unit. So having said that, sir, we'll turn the floor over to you to tell us what you'd like to tell us.
Okay, thank you for hearing me tonight. I want to build like a 1-bedroom apartment in the basement of my house for my brother, because due to the fire in those condominiums on Chestnut Street on Joint Drive, he was affected because he was living in one of the apartments, and now he's in some friend's house, and he's about to leave the town, so I told him, let me see if I can get you to help you building something in my basement so you can live with your wife and your daughter. So this way she doesn't skip school, she stays in town, and you guys can, move on. The unit's gonna be around, just about 480 square feet. So it's, my basement's around 900 square feet, basically, so I'm dividing the basement in half. What else? It has heat, the basement is finished already, but I just want to add the bathroom and a kitchen. And I know I have to comply with the egress exits, on the bedroom and, on the living room, so. The height is
Sure.
6.8, so I know that the code is 6.1, the minimum. So I think if you guys have any questions.
Explain for us a little bit, if you would, about the egress, because this proposed unit is in the basement.
Right.
And you're gonna need two
2 exits.
exits?
We have a back door, a full door in the back of the house, which is gonna be one of the entrances. And in the bedroom, I'm gonna do a window, a egress window. I'm gonna dig with, 2 windows, one for the bedroom, one for the living room, so this way you're gonna have like 3 exits.
And how many people are proposed to live in the apartment?
Just 3, my brother, his wife, and his daughter.
And there's gonna be one bedroom?
It's gonna be 1 bedroom for now.
How-
Because like I said, it's temporary right now, maybe in the future, because right now I didn't know the code, how much was the minimum, all that stuff. So when I came here and I talked to my wife, she said, let's do just 1 bedroom right now, because we don't even know how long they're gonna be there. Okay, maybe in the future we can use a bedroom for ourselves, because it's our basement. We have assigned 14, so in a few years it's gonna be 18, so we never know what's gonna be the future. So that's why you don't wanna go crazy. Maybe he, it's locked, he finds something else and doesn't wanna live in the basement.
In reviewing, have you seen the letter dated May 15th from Mike Crisafulli, our building inspector?
No, I did not.
I did not email that
Okay.
to the
Well, let me read it out loud, because
applicant, that's,
Mr.
my fault.
Crisafulli has indicated that he's reviewed the application and is making certain recommendations for the zoning board. I want you to be able to know what those are, because I'm sure the board is going to be discussing how to proceed on what his suggestion. And this is what his letter says. After reviewing the application, it is my recommendation that the zoning board continue the application until the applicant has the required items, architectural plans for the project, the bylaw stated in the application, the reason for the relief, the square footage of the project on the plans, and a certified plot plan. Other than that, the applicant has complied preliminarily in the requirements by both the fire department and the building department needed to produce the plan as required. So that is what Mr. Crisafulli, our building commissioner, has recommended that the board receive before we can proceed and decide your application. And the items that he references are taken from our zoning bylaws. There is a specific, a bylaw concerning an accessory family dwelling unit, which is what you're seeking to do. And it was 2A, chapter 282, section 7.6. And when it comes to plans, 7.6.8 provides that floor plans of the accessory unit and principal residence with a certified site plan showing the dwelling on the lot and its relationship to the neighborhood within 200 feet of the extremities of the lot shall be filed with the building inspector, and in addition, 5 copies of the same shall be submitted with the application for a special permit. It doesn't appear that we have a certified site plan showing where the dwelling is on the lot. The Google Maps photo, shows it, but unfortunately, that's not a certified site plan.
Right, but I went to the assessors, asked for the plot.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there was the one that was supposed to be there.
Well,
I brought like 7 copies of everything.
okay, yeah, no, I think there are enough copies to be distributed. I wasn't concerned about that. What,
I got a picture they gave me and I should be,
is this what you're referring to?
yes.
Yeah. This will be what the assessor has, and, from that, we can determine what the square footage of the home is, what the square footage of the basement is, and what the total size of the land is. But unfortunately, it's not a certified site plan. Oftentimes when you buy a house, and if you have a mortgage, the mortgage company has a surveyor that performs a rudimentary site plan just showing where the boundaries on the building is and where the boundaries of the property are, to make sure that the home is within the legal requirements with the property. Do you have something like that?
I do have in my house.
Okay.
And the house, it's like in 1.59 acres. So it's a big lot. It's in the
I mean,
middle, basically.
I think we can see from the
Picture,
aerial
yeah.
photo that there's a lot of land around the house.
Yes.
And,
It's like I have 150 on the front.
mhm.
Actually 300 because I'm in the corner, so I have 150, 150.
I'm not
Acre in the
disputing
back,
that
I'm just saying
you
that
don't have, sufficient land.
And I probably
It-
have the paperwork that you are required.
I mean, it's what, from my point of view. Well, let me ask a question first. Don't let me do all the talking. If other people have questions, please feel free to interrupt me. I don't mean to make this a soliloquy. The apartment, you're not going to make any exterior changes in the house by way of extending the house or anything like
No,
that?
it's gonna stay the same.
As I know, in some accessory dwelling unit applications that we've received, there have been stairs or a slight addition to the building, and certainly a certified site plan at that point becomes necessary. As a practical matter, I'm not sure what information a certified site plan is going to provide us that's going to be at all useful or relevant to your application, but we're faced with a requirement by the zoning bylaws that we have that, and we have a letter from our building commissioner, who is the one that ultimately is going to have to approve the building permits and everything else if we grant your application for the special permit, who is telling us or recommending to us that we get that.
Right, I just didn't know.
No, I understand, and, these are not simple matters, and it's not expected that most people are going to know. my sense would be that if you have that type of plan from the mortgage company, that would probably suffice, would probably be sufficient for us to make a determination about and find that there's been a close enough requirement for a certified site plan.
I don't think we need to make that determination. I think that's on the building commissioner for that.
Well, except that the application, the 7.6.8 requires that there be a certified site plan filed with the application, or with the building inspector, together with 5 copies of the application.
I think the one question we might defer to Mike on is the date of the plan.
Mhm.
So if it's, have there been any additions to the house after you've bought it? It's just
I bought
as
2 years
it.
ago, it's stay as is.
Okay.
Everything, like the basement was finished, like I was explaining. I'm
Okay.
just gonna redo it and
Yeah.
divide it, that's it. And add the bathroom,
Sure.
and make one office as a bedroom.
Okay.
And a closet.
I see what you're saying about filing it with the building inspector, but it then goes on to say that 5 copies should be filed with the application for the special permit, so it sort of has to come before us in some form.
Okay, so that's what Mike is saying, that he recommends that we continue.
We get it at all, because obviously he didn't get it in advance, so there had been, I think, some consideration as to whether we should open the hearing or say that matters were not, we didn't have sufficient information, so we weren't going to schedule a hearing. I understand Mr. De Silva's situation, and trying to help his relatives who were left homeless because of the horrendous fire that occurred at the Chestnut Street Apartments, and I know that the town and many people in the town and many agencies in the town have been working very hard attempting to find alternative housing and to help the victims, who number, I think, almost 50. And I am, sensitive to that, but I also think there's only so much we can do without the necessary plan. What I would suggest perhaps is if Mr. De Silva has the plan that I've talked about and that he seems to think that he does have in his records, and that he submits that to us, that if we continue this to our next scheduled meeting, which would be the 2nd Tuesday in June, but that if we get that submitted to us beforehand and can review it, that may be sufficient for each of us to look at it, not communicate with each other, obviously, but
No way.
simply submit it to the planning office and get it distributed to us, that when we reconvene on that 2nd Tuesday in June, we might well be in a position to proceed with hearing the application on the merits and determining whether to authorize it or allow it, grant the special permit or not.
So could we put in one of the conditions that we have to have those plans before it actually gets approved, but go forth, open the meeting, and talk about the whole thing, discuss it, and decide if this is something we're gonna allow? I don't know. If
I'm
it's-
not comfortable with that, because
Okay.
to me, the plan is a precursor to the application being heard.
Mhm.
And to make certain determinations and make a decision without having seen the plan, I'm not comfortable. I don't think that's a good idea.
What if I go home and bring it back. I live like down up on the hill. Maybe 10 minutes for me to go there, get it, come back. Whatever I can find. I know it's not a copy, but at least you guys can see whatever I have, and then I can make the copies and.
Well, the evening is young. We're not being broadcast live.
If we're not breaking any rules, it's all right with me.
It's okay with me.
Is that all right with people?
Yeah.
Okay, why don't we adjourn the meeting temporarily to allow Mr. De Silva an opportunity to go home, retrieve the document, and come back. And we will suspend the hearing at this point. I think we probably need a motion to do that.
Before, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Can we review documents that haven't been made for public review for this particular meeting, or do they have to be published?
No, I believe we can review it. We've considered it at every hearing documents that aren't submitted until to the
actual meeting.
To the meeting. So
Okay.
I don't see that as being a violation or anything improper. I mean, we've done that consistently, and I think it's perfectly appropriate, because otherwise we'd never be able to get a decision done. Is there a
I'll make
motion
that,
to suspend the meeting until the applicant comes back?
so moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay.
Get it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Mr. De Silva has returned, and sir, were you able to, you're here, I see, with a lot of papers, so what were you able to find?
I found the mortgage inspection plan, the one that you mentioned, what demonstrates where the house is sitting in the lot. I also have, when I bought the house, the previous owner, they had some paperwork and even plans on the big scale. Even
This
the
big.
lot around, so it can show everything, my lot, building
Okay.
next door.
Distribute this to everybody. Once you've all had a chance to see it, I just want to ask a question about it. Okay. Perhaps we can make a copy of that, so
Yes.
we can enter that into our records, but give it back to Mr. De Silva.
Yes.
To my eyes, it seems to have all the information that a certified site plan would contain. Do people agree with that?
Yeah.
Brian?
I do agree with it. I believe one of the reasons they want a certified site plan up to date is to verify that nothing has changed since that was produced,
Okay.
whenever that was.
Okay, well, let's,
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
okay.
Just 2 years.
Have you made any changes in the exterior of the building?
Nothing.
Okay.
I was actually going to pull another permit because I have a barn in the back of all the way in the back, that I'm waiting, going to turn into my business office, but that's another project.
Now, with respect to section 7.6.8 in plans, it talks about floor plans of the accessory unit and principal residence shall be filed with the building inspector, and 5 copies of same shall be submitted with the filing of the application. I note that in the application materials, that the information you obtained from the assessor's office does have a drawing of the existing
House.
living area with square footage. So I guess I think that would suffice for meeting that requirement.
Well, I'd like to make a comment on the plans. I have two diagrams here.
Right.
Uh,
One was how it was and how I want to turn it into.
So, could you
Can I show you?
delineate what that one
Since
is?
this is how it is right now.
Okay,
I
so,
have, when I go down my stairs, I have one playroom,
Mhm.
and then when I go around, actually, one playroom, I go around, I have another one. This would be the area, I'm gonna lose this office, as you see right there, and this is gonna be the area where I'm gonna turn into my in-law. This, I still gonna keep this for my kids,
You see?
and I have the laundry
Mhm.
right here, so I'm still gonna
Mhm.
keep the laundry, but this is what it is right now. So I'm gonna close right here, follow this wall, open out another 3 feet right here. So this is gonna be the bathroom and the kitchen, outside with the bathroom, and living room and bedroom. The egress is gonna be, I put the stairs right here because it's outside, I didn't notice before. I submit a plan without this, but this is for myself and for you guys to understand that once I have this step, it looks like it's a concrete. Above, I open up the ceiling, okay, the drop ceiling, it has a concrete right here. So I was talking to Josh, and probably this wall, I'm gonna have to move like 2, maybe 3 feet this way, so I can make the egress inside the bedroom. That's only
So- So my point is, the plans are fluid now, they seem to be changing in terms of what you plan to do. So if this is was allegedly the final document, we've gotta put some work into this to make this a little bit more accurate in terms of what you just said you were gonna
right up, yeah,
change and do something, so
I understand, yes, because
I'm
it's
gonna
what
make the recommendation that we revise these plans to include more pertinent measurements and information here. I know the building inspector has submitted a letter to say he's okay with the plans, and I would like to go on record that, to have a copy of what we're really approving here, because it seems to be changing.
I only changed the plan right here because of the egress window. That's why I'm opened up the room a little bit, see right here, these dots.
The dotted line is what
It's
you're gonna
because
use?
this is, I was going to use this wall because it is right there right now. But now, because I have the stairs and I don't have like a foot of what I can cut because it's concrete, now I have to move the wall, that's why I thought I have to move so I
Right.
can make the
So-
egress inside the bedroom.
I think what we have to have is there's a
I can
final
redo
plan.
it with
Can
that.
you, can you
Just-
redo
I
it?
can redo it.
And
It's
can you
just-
do it to scale? Is that possible? Or to get some help, have someone help you to do this? Because I think it should reflect exactly what we're approving
I
here.
tried to doing this, square, paper, because I was using the scale
Oh,
as
graph
one.
paper?
I graphed like 1 square feet, so this way you can go and try to follow a square footage, so it doesn't change much. The only difference was that wall I didn't expect, I didn't know until, a few days ago, like a week ago. That's why I have to do that and change another plan. But basically, I'm not gonna,
Well, I'm gonna make the recommendation
Sure.
that we have a more detailed, thank you, a more detailed plan in terms of the actual items to be built and constructed, and it should reflect the exact measurements here.
well, what actually I wish to do is, if you guys approved, I want to ask the building inspector to come and take a look before I do anything. So this way, if you find something that I need to change, I do it before, so I don't have to go again with the plans and try to redo it again. Let's say, he said, no, you have to do this is not okay, this is okay.
Well, let me make another
I don't
statement.
know how that works.
You know,
but-
for us to make a decision, we have to get the actual plans that you're submitting.
Right.
It seems that the plans you're submitting are a little in flux or changing, or you have different ideas. And I think that's why the building inspector said he'd like to continue this until plans are finalized. And really, the planning office should review these things before they're, submitted for the actual hearing. A lot of the information was not presented to us in terms of square footage, the actual
Well,
regulations.
it's on that questions, the square footage. It's on the paper with a lot of questions, 13.
Yeah, the 13 questions.
Yeah, it has.
So,
It's
there's
right there
there's a
in the
question
back.
here about the egress window needs additional information such as dimensions. That would be nice to have as a footnote to your plans to say, how big is the window gonna be? How big are so I understood that the building code says that you can count a window as an egress point, but I have to know how big that window is, and I wanna know how far off the floor, off the ground grade it is.
It's too wide. I put it right there. It's not in the grade, so it's gonna be a step down, maybe
But how far down, do you know?
the window.
Yeah. What are the dimensions of the window?
It's gonna be 35 by 26, the one that I'm gonna put it in.
Okay, so that would be nice to have on your plan here, as a footnote.
Right, yeah,
To
I
say-
didn't know, I just put it in the paper.
Yeah, it's on,
Yeah,
it's
it's
on
right
here.
there. I just didn't know that I have to put it.
But on here, it says 35.5 by 23.
Yeah, something like that, so.
But it can't be something like that,
Yeah,
we have to know what it actually is.
That's what I found, I went looking for the egress window, that's the measurement that I found that I could fit and comply with the codes.
Okay, and then I understand now, from my understanding what you just said, that egress window is now gonna, a person, when they open the window to get out, in case of an emergency, God forbid, that we have an emergency, how far down are people stepping, or how far up do they have to
They're
go?
gonna make 2 steps. Maybe 1 step, like, my window right now, it's like 6 inches above the floor. The window, the small windows, basement window that we have. Okay, so I have 6 inches above the level. So I'm gonna bring down another 2.5 foot, so I comply It has to be
So
three,
are you
3
gonna
feet
cut
back.
into the foundation?
I'm not, I'm gonna cut the foundation, the window.
But we have to know that, we have to understand that. I mean, it seems to me, I don't know, I'm not speaking for the rest of the members of the board, it seems that you've had some discussions with the building inspector, you've had some discussions with Josh about this project, correct?
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, I didn't
But
talk to Mike yet, I
I-
only talked to Josh.
I haven't been privy to those discussions, so I don't know what you guys are planning here. And if you're asking for my approval on something, I gotta know that. It's
I
gotta be
understand.
clear as mud, you know?
Well, it's my first time coming to.
No,
and
I'm
I-
not, I'm not
I'm
faulting,
not-
I'm just telling you what I
understand.
need
I-
to have to make a decision. I need a little bit more detail on this to understand what I'm doing. Because when I look at this, drawing, you know, I get different dimensions here. So on the first plan, okay, let me just show you.
Right,
On here, we're talking about the dimension is 9.9 this way, correct?
right,
I get down here, this same dimension, which seems to be going across, is 9.8.
right.
So is this 9.8 and is this really 9.9?
Yes, because what they have is, they have a wall, and it looks like they double the wall. So instead of being a one wall, the wall is like 10 inch maybe, something like that. It's not like a regular wall, like when they go down the basement, instead of have one small wall right here, they have like double, the other side smaller.
Okay.
So that's what makes the difference, I don't know, it's the way
So-
it was
2x4
built.
wall and a concrete foundation.
So I think,
That's the only difference.
what we have to have some more clarity. We have to have more clarity in terms of the final plan that you have. And that's why if you need to talk to the building inspector, please do that, or if you need to talk to Josh, please do that. But when we're ready to make a decision on your project, I'd like to know that's exactly what we're approving.
Right.
Do you have any questions about that?
No questions, just like, I try to do my best, like I
I
said.
understand, I understand that.
Some
and-
like difference, it's because they have, like I said, double walls, not everywhere, but someplace, I don't know why they hanged over there, you know, what they used to be, so.
Mhm.
They used to work as a church or something, like people convene and, you know, celebrate in the basement, I don't know.
Mhm.
So that's why it's kind of a little bit off here and there, but I try to be as much as accurate possible. And the egress window, I didn't know I have to put over there, so I put on the piece of paper. You know, and I didn't know if I have to notify you guys it's gonna be cut because basically it's not in the first draw, so probably it had to be cut.
And Mike knows about that, or the building inspector knows about that?
Like I said, I talked to Josh, I submit this, so he probably took a look, right? Yeah, so.
If I may harp on Stu's comments, so I also agree that further, I guess, clarity needs to be done on what your final vision is for the dwelling. If you have any questions, I think all of us would agree, but I'm speaking for myself, that you should just check in with Josh before submitting anything to us, so that way you don't have to come back. Because we'd hate for you to delay this project, because we understand like the situation that you're in, and there are a lot of emotions. So check in with Josh, check in with the building commissioner, and then submit the plan, would be my recommendation.
So I had a question. As a zoning board, are we supposed to be approving the plan? Or are we just looking at whether or not this is allowed in this zoning district to have an auxiliary dwelling in this home? Because I don't think that, looking at the plan, that that's really our jurisdiction. I believe it's the building commissioners to figure out the egress. I think the question before us, and I could very well be wrong, is whether or not this should be allowed by this board to be built in this home, in this neighborhood. Whether the room is 9.8 or 9.7, doesn't matter to me as a zoning board member. I'm going to let the building commissioner figure out the nitty-gritty on the egress and that sort of thing. The plans are inadequate, but think that what we're here to do is to determine the zoning aspect of it, not the bathroom and the kitchen and the sizes. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
You know, I think, you know, you're correct. I mean, the one thing we do, and I'm going back to section 7.6, that basically says what a accessory family dwelling unit requires. 7.6.7 does talk about an area limitation, and we have to make a finding that the accessory unit is no more than a maximum of 25% in floor area of the principal residence, or 800 square feet, whichever is greater. I'm not sure, given the existing drawings, whether we can do that or not. Perhaps
Well, I think,
doing that and comparing it with the assessor's information that talks about the square footage in the living area, and also talks about, appears to be a furnished basement area of 750 square feet, with the total basement area being 918, and the total finished area of the upstairs as being 2,100 square feet. So it would seem that perhaps we could make that finding based on the documentation that we have. But getting back to Brian's point, you know, I think ultimately it is with the building commissioner to determine whether the
So don't we
the
make,
building code has been has been complied with respect to
right,
the unit,
don't we make all of these,
and whether it has enough access, egress access, et cetera.
don't we make all of these accessory family unit dwellings part of the condition of the building commissioner issuing the permit? And our decision is to determine whether or not, as a hardship, we can allow this gentleman to
Well,
build a unit?
I think what we ultimately do, because it's a special permit, we go then to section 9.3, involving special permits, and the criteria under 9.3.2 for the allowance of special permits, which is community needs served by the proposal, traffic flow and safety, adequacy of utilities, neighborhood character, social structures, impacts on the natural environment, and potential fiscal impact, including impact on town services, tax base, and employment. All of those
Yep.
go with this, a special permit.
9.3.2,
And I think what we do with respect to the accessory family dwelling unit, as I interpret it, we have to, we grant it, may be granted for the conversion of, by attachment, be a common wall or containment within an existing single-family dwelling, only a new construction, yada, 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 in districts where allowed in the table of use regulations, provided there is compliance with all provisions of this section. It goes on to have use limitations about the number of people, disposal of sewage, adequate provision made for disposal of sewage, and I would note that from the assessor's map that there's town water and sewer. Ingress, egress, and access, adequate provision as determined by the building inspector shall be provided for ingress and egress. So I think it does, ultimately, the specific, what's within the body of the unit, does lie with the building inspector to make sure they've complied with the applicant has complied with the building code. And it's up to us to determine whether in this particular neighborhood, an accessory family dwelling unit is suitable and that the special permit criteria has been met. I agree that I think perhaps what's, given us some concern is that in the past where we have dealt with an accessory family dwelling unit, the plans that have been submitted with the application have been plans that either have been professionally drawn, so it's very simple and clear what the plan is, so that if we had any concerns, they were clearly answered. The one that we did, I think the most recent one that we did last year, which was at 366 Elliott Street, was the conversion of basically what had been a second floor apartment to be used as an associated family dwelling. And we had I'm not sure if the plan was prepared professionally, but by a professional, but it was professionally done, and was, fairly clear in what was being done. But I think the point you've raised is a good one, as far as the specifics about the rooms and whatnot, all would fit within the
Building commissioner
requirements of the building commissioner.
We're not qualified to decide what's a proper size window for egress. That would be the building commissioner's decision.
Well, I think if we were to go forward and ultimately grant the special permit, obviously one of the conditions would be to meet all of the requirements of section 7.6. I know just in reviewing the previous decision that we made, and that goes back again to 366 Elliott Street, among the conditions that we placed, when we granted it, we required that the resident be a relative of the homeowner. We conditioned the number of occupants based on 7.6.3, that the applicant comply with any requirements of the building department, et cetera, so that, those were the conditions.
Yeah, I think those are all in
applied at that time.
7.6. Those are all in 7.6 already, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, if we were to decide to go forward and to grant it with the documents that's before us, I certainly think that our building inspector might require further plans before acting, but that would be his determination.
Right, yeah. So my thought is that I think that in this case, we should let this gentleman build an apartment for his family member with all the conditions being 7.6, that it be a family member, the 7.6.10, the occupancy permit, which gets renewed every 2 years by the building inspector to make sure it's a family member that lives there. If the gentleman moves, the apartment becomes dismantled, it is no longer a two-family, it's not a two-family house in a residential one-family zone. But because of the hardship, that we let him go. And again, going by the commissioner's note to us, all of this is conditional on him supplying proper plans to the building commissioner with all of the certified site plan, and all the stuff that.
Those are the four things he asked for.
Thank you. Yeah, architectural plans, reason for the relief, the square footage, the plot plans, everything that the building commissioner wants. If he gets that, in my opinion, as the zoning board member, I think he should be able to build this auxiliary apartment in his home.
I think some of the things that the building commissioner has requested are in fact within our purview, and that references the reason for the relief, and I believe that is referenced in the application.
Yeah.
On the second page. Certainly the section of the building
Those are the
code
four
that's
things he looked
being applied for is contained in the public notice, perhaps not spelled out formally in the application, the handwritten application that the applicant did, but I have no problem with knowing what the
Yeah,
what
number
the
8 on the
chapter is.
list, you know, allowing my brother to stay in town with his
Yeah.
family, and so his daughter stays in school. I mean, that,
That's reason for the
Yeah,
relief.
and again,
Yeah.
I think that's correct, so I mean, I'm comfortable, you know, going forward and reviewing the criteria to see if the criteria for a special permit are met.
let's do it.
Because we do have to make findings.
Yep. You're talking 9.3.2?
I take exception to the word hardship. I don't think hardship should enter into our discussion at all. I think the law is the law. Section 7.6 states what has to happen. And, you know, by saying, gee, this is a hardship, we should approve it, I'm not in favor of that at all. I think it has its own merits just based on 7.6. The gentleman wants to construct an apartment for his family member. That's fine enough for me. I don't have to know it's a hardship or whatever. But I think if we go out and extend ourselves beyond what's written in here, because it doesn't say accessory family dwelling for a hardship. It just says accessory dwelling, period. So I'm not inclined to deal with the hardship case. I don't mean to be, you know, mean about it, but we should just require that the structure adheres to whatever the provisions are here that we're gonna discuss, and that's it. And if the building inspector, as you said, you know, will determine all these other things, then, you know, I think our job then becomes very easy. You know, I'm beginning to wonder why we were even considering it, because if people come to the planning office and talk to the building inspector and say, I want a accessory family dwelling, and he says, fine, why are we wasting our time here? I mean, why am I here listening to all of this? If the building inspector can just simply say, okay, you adhere to it, and
Well-
I'm playing devil's advocate here,
I
guys.
mean,
you
no,
know,
I understand, and I'm giving you an opportunity to
Vent.
advocate as you wished, and we're here because 7.6 requires a special permit for this type of request. And I agree with the issue of the hardship. There's no provision in the bylaws for granting something or acting in a certain way because of a hardship. So let's set that aside.
Okay.
And deal with what's necessary, and has he submitted sufficient documentation to qualify for consideration of the accessory family dwelling unit. 7.6.1 purpose, 7.6.2 special permit, 7.6.3 use limitations, 7.6.4 disposal of sewage, 7.6.5 ingress, egress, and access, adequate provision as determined by the building inspector. 7.6.6 required finding that the ZBA shall determine that such conversion and occupancy of each unit shall meet the requirements of this section. 7.6.7 area limitation. Such accessory use shall be limited to a maximum of 25% in floor area of the principal residence, or 800 square feet, whichever is greater, exclusive of garage. Even with the plan, if you go to the assessor's documentation, printout, the total floor area between the main floor and the upper floor is 2,100 square feet, and the finished basement area is 750 square feet, which includes an area beyond which the proposed apartment is. It would seem to me, doing quick math, that it qualifies under the 800 square foot maximum, and it would be less than that.
I think Mr. De Silva actually said he calculated the square footage to be
480.
400.
480 ultimately is what's gonna be built,
480.
right.
Okay.
7.6.8 plans, floor plans of the accessory unit and principal residence with a certified site plan shall be filed with the building inspector. Well, there is a floor plan roughly drawn of the basement area, accessory unit, and there is a floor plan, again, attached as part of the assessor's map concerning the square footage. Parking, 7.6.9. I know the applicant addresses parking in the, his supplemental answering
Mr. Chair-
questions.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The document that the applicant went home and got, and we reviewed as the title, kind of, I think when you look at that, that provides sufficient evidence that parking should not be a problem
Oh, I agree, I'm
for
just
that
saying.
particular lot, but I think we should note that.
Oh, it's an issue that we have to address, and I'm just going through the various items that
Okay.
are required. And then 7.6.10, occupancy permit has to be issued by the building inspector. And that's it. So, I mean, I think the point that Brian, raised is a good one, and I mean, I think that, the necessary requirements have been met under 7.6, and then we go to 9.3.3 on the special permit to see whether there's a written determination that the adverse effects of the proposed unit does not outweigh its beneficial impacts to the town or neighborhood in view of the particular characteristics of the site and of the proposal in relation to that site. And as we have done in past matters, in going forward and reviewing that, we discuss each of those items, and then if we decide that a special permit should be granted, we just briefly read into the record what we feel those
Okay.
points are for purposes of the decision.
You gonna do it?
Was that satisfactory with everybody?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay. Very good. Now, sitting on this hearing, and again, just so everybody knows, we have been advised by town council that under the statute, the 3 members of the ZBA are the people that are required to vote on the hearings, and the associate members, although they are allowed to participate in the discussion and ask questions, etc., are not allowed to vote when we get to a decision, unless one of the members is not able to participate for whatever reason. So the 3 members are Stu Siegel, Brian Forrestall, who has been appointed by the selectmen to fulfill the unexpired term of Tom McNulty, who resigned when he moved out of town, and myself. We haven't gotten to a point of voting as yet, but I think perhaps we should discuss the points of 9.3.2, the criteria, to make a determination and then go from there. Comfortable with that, everybody?
Yes.
Okay, 9.3.2, item number 1, community needs served by the proposal. I would suggest that based on what the applicant has presented in his application and orally tonight, the community needs would be met by providing a residence for family members displaced by a fire.
Agreed.
Great.
Item number 2, traffic flow and safety, including parking and loading. I know the reference in the application and in the accompanying information indicates that there's adequate parking for at least 6 cars. It's a very large piece of property with an extended driveway. The driveway exits onto Chestnut Street, which is a sufficiently large street, I would say. How many vehicles, sir, will be parking in the driveway
I
ultimately at
have
this point?
2 and probably another 2.
2? Okay.
So 4 total.
3, adequacy of utilities and other public services. The assessor's information sheet indicates there's town water and town sewer. Item number 4, neighborhood character and social structures. The house is located in a residential unit. It is adjacent to the Chestnut Street apartments, so that there are multi-story buildings, and this is the first single-family home on Chestnut Street, which is a single-family home, so it would seem that the accessory unit would not change the neighborhood character in any way, shape, or form. 5, impacts on the natural environment. It would seem to me that there would be no impacts on the environment. The proposal for the accessory unit is to be limited to the confines of the existing home, and there would not seem to be any impact on the environment. Is that agreed?
Yes.
And number 6, potential fiscal impact, including impact on town services, tax base, and employment. Would seem to be little impact on town services or employment, and as the applicant has noted in his supplemental answers to questions, his tax bill is probably going to go up.
Yep.
Okay. That being said, are we prepared to, is there any further discussion?
If I may, just for
Certainly.
clarification, Mr. Chairman. So for 9.3.5, we're saying that the plan submitted is in compliance with 9.4? Everything under 9.4 as the plan stands right now? That's not current. So 9.3.5
Yeah,
says.
See that? Mm-hmm.
I would suggest that we make that a condition as well to grant this. That the building inspector make sure that the plans, the plot plan, the certified plot plan, everything that he said he needs on this is to his satisfaction before he actually submits the permit. But we as a board need to determine if we think it's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, we don't.
I raised the question as to whether 9.4 is applicable. Obviously, we don't do site plan reviews here. 9.3.4, I'm sorry, 9.3.5 does say I mean, the site plan review doesn't really seem to be applicable to this type of application for an accessory use, because there's no change being being made to the, to the site
Site.
is,
I think the second half of the first sentence clarifies it for us. It says, unless this requirement is waived by the planning board because of unusually simple circumstances.
and again, the planning board is not, this is not before the planning board, which is why I'm,
But we're not.
I question whether we need to do it or not. I would think perhaps a finding that the plan as submitted is sufficient for purposes of making the determination for an accessory family dwelling unit might be sufficient.
I think the plans are inadequate, but for our finding, I think they're adequate.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
I would agree with that. Stu, you on board with that?
Yeah, this is somewhat confusing here
It
in
is.
terms of the bylaws
Mhm.
themselves, but if we wanna hang our hat on what was just said, I'll vote for that.
Okay. If there is no further discussion and no further questions, is there a motion to?
So, Mr. Chair, when are you gonna open the public hearing?
That's a very good point.
You know, I consider it kind of inappropriate for you to be deliberating,
You're-
having the public hearing open.
You're-
And, you know, you're not following the proper procedure. I've been sitting here waiting now for over 2 hours, and you haven't recognized me for anything. Even the items I came here on that I was involved with. So am I sitting here for my health, or are you gonna open the public hearing?
You raise a very good point, Mr. Morgan, with respect to opening the hearing for public comment on this matter. We will have not closed the public hearing, so Mr. De Silva has had an opportunity to say his piece. The board has had an opportunity to discuss the matter, and we will now allow public comment, and then we will resume discussion. Mr. De Silva, if you don't mind just stepping back, and anyone from the public here to comment, please step forward, identify yourself, please.
Yeah, Steve Morgan. I was here for some other matters, and I was also interested in this matter. I had a couple questions perhaps we can get an answer to. But first, I'd just like to make the comment that I think it's very clear that the building official has already weighed in on what he needs before this should have even come before this board. And so the idea that you're having this hearing without meeting the building official's request of the applicant seems out of order. The plans aren't here in the right detail. He's already told you that. He's told you what he needs. These are conditions to get in front of the board, not after the fact. And so to the members who are suggesting that, I think you're right on with that. My first question is there any plans in the town that show this basement was actually done with permitted construction? Anything on file to show that the existing conditions are correct? Or is it another case where something's illegal to begin with? Anybody know? Anybody look?
I
I
don't
don't
have that answer.
understand your question.
So there's a finished basement here, which was probably not built out at the time the house was built out. So are there any plans in file that show that this was permitted construction and that it is being modified? We had a case here just last year, someone trying to add a bathroom to an illegal finished basement that had to go through a number of steps because the original construction was illegal. So is there any plans on file that indicate that the current conditions of the basement represent legally permitted work?
And the relevance of that to our determination as to whether this unit is appropriate for a permit for an accessory family dwelling unit?
So you're trying to grandfather the plans in here as if they are correct and accurate? It's not even clear that the basement is in the current
Well-
correct condition. Perhaps an enforcement action is the more appropriate action, not a permit for further changes.
Mr. Morgan, we
Yeah.
probably should ask the applicant, after
Well,
you're,
okay.
after you're done, when he bought the house, was it there, or did he actually do it? And we'll ask him that question when you're done.
I appreciate that, thank you, and I think it has a great deal of relevance. And again, the building department should have had access to all this information before it ever got here. Because if it is illegal, it's illegal,
Mhm.
not because he bought it. I mean, maybe he can go back to his Realtor with his insurance and get recovery for that, but.
Do you know, sir, whether there was whether it was
I don't,
acted or not?
I don't have the town's files, but I looked at the informal plans. I suspect if there were formal plans, they'd be on the table. But I don't know. I'm just asking a rather basic question before you proceed. My next question, and this relates to the sanitary code, right? So you're here with the zoning code, but there are certain minimum codes required in terms of the space available per person. I think I heard that this is going to be granted as an accessory unit with up to 4 people. And so I just, you know, when you're grandfathering this in and you're allowing additional parking and what have you, I'm just wondering who in the process has evaluated that? Has the building inspector evaluated the unit to see if the plans that are not complete comply with the sanitary code? I believe it's 100 square feet per person, 150 for the first, and there's certain room requirements and other requirements for egress. It looked to me like the 2 egress windows are on the same side on the plans I looked at. So if there's a fire, I guess everybody's going out the same side. Not sure if that complies. I'm not sure, is there a letter from the fire official that they reviewed the egress requirements that you're voting on?
Mr. Christopher's letter
There
indicates
is,
that
yes.
he's met
Okay.
with the fire department and has, I believe he said has
Yeah, he met their requirements.
met their requirements.
So I believe there are stairs associated with those egress windows, the way they're designed, assuming they take the blocks out. Is there adequate light available in that space? It's below grade, isn't it? I heard that they're digging. So I think there's natural light requirements here as well. To have an accessory unit, you have to have a certain amount of natural light, have to have, certain other conditions met to even have your plans reviewed. So these are the kind of things that would be on the plans if the plans were developed and given to you to review. And whether they're directly in your jurisdiction or not, they'd inform the board with actual plans as to what the situation is in sufficient professional detail. That's the reason you need a certified plan, to recognize that someone who knows the code, knows the difference between the sanitary code and the zoning code and the planning code, has all looked at it and put it on a plan, so that you don't have to know every detail. So I think that's the whole purpose of having a plan before you vote on a plan, so that it doesn't get approved and then someone finds an issue down the road, like some of these other cases that have already occurred in town recently. And so that's what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in blocking this applicant. I'm just interested in that he gets a complete analysis and that people get the plans and figure out if it's valid construction, figure out if the fire board's in the right place. I haven't heard anybody say what kind of furnace this was. Is there an oil tank, or is this gas?
These are all questions for the building commissioner, sir, not for the zoning board of appeals.
Well, I disagree with you, sir, because the smoke detectors and the CO detectors are based upon the type of furnace that you use and the type of configuration that you put in the plans. And so if you've got those on there and you're considering them and they're on the drawing, someone ought to know what kind of furnace you have over there.
That goes far beyond our area of
Okay.
competence and concern.
Well, I would let the planning
This gentleman
official-
would not be able to use this unit if we were to approve it unless he gets an occupancy permit. That would come from the building commissioner, who will have made all the proper determinations about all of the issues you were raising.
Who has already told you in a letter not to act until he gets what he needs, and you're ignoring him. So that's what I'm hearing sitting here in the audience, is the building inspector has already asked for these things, and you're trying to find a way to ignore the request and grant it on a conditional basis.
I think I wrote
Yeah.
down what he asked for, and I believe we got all of those things.
So you have those certified
Yes.
plans?
I think we got the certified plot plan, yes.
Okay. I think you'll find in Massachusetts that drawings for construction, which these are, require a certified, licensed construction person, not an individual who wants to build in their home. Because that's not what's required. Just like in town, you can't do your own plumbing. You have to have a plumbing permit.
Did we not get a certified plot plan? He brought it down,
Josh has.
and we all saw it.
That's a survey. As far as I can see, that's a survey. I didn't get a copy, I wasn't at the table, but that looks like a survey to me, which is less than a plot plan. In any event, I don't want to take up all your time. I have been sitting here for a while. I just, I'm amazed that when the building inspector asks you to get something for him, that you're trying to find ways to ignore him instead of getting the applicant to do it, because there should be licensed drawings, not handwritten on graph paper. I mean, I'm an engineer, I like to do my own drawings, I throw them in Visio, but that is not acceptable normally for a town board for construction. It's just not the standard. And so I think you ought to make people follow the standards required. You do it for other folks, and I think that's really where I'm coming from. Again, not to block this applicant, but just to see that things get done in a reasonable manner. And, you know, I think you should put the time in. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Could I address your comments, Mr. Morgan?
Sure, I'm happy to.
All I want to do is move this forward and give it back to the building inspector and say, please do not grant a permit until you have everything that you need to make the proper decision. But in the opinion of this board, we either find that it's okay to issue it or not issue it. That's all. I'm not issuing a building permit tonight.
Again, I'm not suggesting you are. What I'm suggesting that you're trying to do is, instead of having the conditions required before you consider the application, you're trying to grant conditioning after the fact, which is exactly the wrong kind of process that people should follow. Because if you have requirements to start, you do the things that are in the code that are required to start before you can reach that conclusion. Because you know what? When they do those plans and they're over in the building office, they may or may not have something in them that you might have changed your mind. I don't know, maybe they will, maybe they won't. But the whole purpose of submitting the plans in their complete form before you vote on it is so that you have all the information. And when you vote on things before you have the information the building inspector's looking for, you're no longer in the loop. You're done. And so he's never gonna come back to you. He's gonna be stuck with whatever he has at that point.
I
So-
don't agree with you. If we
Yeah.
condition the conditions have to be met in order for him to grant the permit.
So this is just like a judge, and,
Yeah.
and I know there's at least one lawyer on the board. Judges cannot transfer their authority. You know, you can't, a probate judge can't let a parenting court make judicial decisions. You, as a board member, cannot advocate your decision on behalf of the building official. He has his own responsibility. And so you're supposed to make your decision based on all the information required of the zoning code.
Mhm.
If it's not here, and the building official says he needs to get it, I think you should be making him get it before you vote, because what you're trying to advocate for is to put your decision out in the building office with the building inspector, and he's not the board member, you are. And so that's the way I look at it, and again, maybe we disagree, I don't know that we do, but, you know, you're basically pushing it to the next level without having finished your step. That's how I see it.
So our step, because I'm
Yeah.
not a pro at this or anything, but
I'm
I
just-
think our step is 9.3.2, those 6 criteria, and then going back to accessory family dwelling unit, the 7.6. And I'm not sure where we're falling short. No, we don't have maybe a certified plot plan. But we're talking about finishing a basement, and, you know, if we were talking additions, garages, things outside of that frame, I could see where it could get complicated. But we're staying within the footprint of the dwelling. I feel pretty comfortable.
You know, I had a permit pulled for my entertainment room with the town. I stayed within the framework of my condo.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had to provide plans with my builder. I had to go through the whole process in the building office. Didn't have to come over here for a special permit because it was part of my home.
Right.
The zoning code is here and it has these application requirements because that's what Ashland voted on.
Yep.
And so I respect the fact that, gee, maybe every single-family home in town ought to get an accessory apartment because
don't
it's
agree
in
with
the
that.
code, but I don't think that's the reason the code was written this way. I
Right,
think the code
yeah.
was written this way, and the requirements were put there to be followed, not moved beyond. And so that's really what I'm reacting to, is the process, and that's, you know, more what I'm interested in, seeing people understand the process, follow the process, and not skip the steps. And I think, you know, that's what this board was doing last year on a couple of the things in front of it, in my opinion. And I'd like to, even on something simple like this, when the town staff and/or the process is not being followed, so that the simple questions like, is the work permitted? So this gentleman might have gotten a copy of a permit out of the file showing what was in his basement now, if it existed. It would have been real easy for him to take the existing drawing add his things and make his changes. But the fact that he didn't have it either suggests he didn't ask for it or it's not legal work to begin with. And that's a concern, illegal construction. It's not that this gentleman did it, but it's still gotta be remediated if it's in fact the case. And so he may need a plan for the whole basement. Building official may need a plan to fix the whole basement, like the bathroom that had to get fixed over in front of this board last year. And so, you know, these are basic questions that staff, you know, can pull the file, they have the file. And again, the applicant may not, he's been there 2 years, he said. He didn't do the construction, may have taken someone's word for it, but if they had permits, they would have given it to him.
So if it is an illegal apartment, and he's seeking a special permit to build an apartment, does that supersede what's there? Because we're building a new apartment now.
So I'm not the building official.
Yeah.
But if it's
Neither are
illegal,
we.
if it's illegal construction,
Yeah.
my personal opinion, based on what I know, is that all of that basement construction needs to be re-permitted and remediated, which would mean that his obligation would be for a full plan of the whole basement, and that everything in that basement complies with the code, with the building official. Again, your jurisdiction is just the one piece, but you're enabling people to get to another step if things are illegal now. And instead of enabling, you know, the building official should be able to complete and correct the process. And you ought to be getting perhaps a whole plan with the whole basement, with a permit for the whole job to get it legal. That would be the remediation that I would be familiar with. And again, I don't know if Josh has the document or not, but that's the normal course as I understand it, is
And
illegal
we're
work gets
talking,
fixed.
you're talking about things that are, that you don't know about, and you're making guesses and assumptions, and I don't think that helps you, and it doesn't help us.
I asked the question, Mr. Chair. I
understand.
asked if the document.
I would point out
Yeah.
that the assessor's information does talk about a finished basement area of 750 square feet. So someone in town recognizes that there's a finished area down there.
Okay, then there's a
So-
plan. Do we agree?
I don't know whether there's a plan or not. I'm not interested if there's a plan or
Is
not,
it- Is
Mr.
it possible
Morgan.
to finish a basement without a plan?
Don't know.
I don't know, sir. That's not why we're here tonight. That's not our jurisdiction. You can smirk if you want to, but that doesn't help you
I'm
or us.
on camera and I'm not smirking. I will say that sounds like you want to be willfully ignorant of the situation, because you're the gentleman here from the town who's responsible and he can answer the question. I'm not answering the question. I don't know. But I do see circumstances that suggest to me that you probably have some unpermitted construction that need to be remediated, and you shouldn't be taking new action if in fact it's not legal work.
That's a huge assumption on your part. You just said you have some unpermitted construction that needs to be remediated. That's not anything we know. That's probably not the case, and we certainly don't know that. And neither do you unless you can show us.
Again, you know, I think my words are on camera. I said it appears that we don't have plans, and so there's a legitimate question of whether that basement was permitted and constructed
No,
correctly.
you said it appears that we have unpermitted construction.
That is what you said, Mr. Morgan.
That's what I did say.
But we're
That's
not.
correct.
We don't know that.
Without a plan, that's exactly what it appears as, because you have no plans. And the plans ought to be on permanent record in the town. I can make a public documents request for them, I suppose, go up to the office. But, you know, you're bored. You guys ought to have all this background information from staff. That's the only point I'm making. I'm not trying to cast aspersions. I'm just saying you ought to know and ask the question. So, thank you.
Any further questions of Mr. De Silva? No one else in the room, so there's no other public comment. No questions for Mr. De Silva?
No.
Then, is there a motion to close the hearing and move to deliberations?
I make a motion to close the public hearing and move to deliberation.
Is there a second?
I second that.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay. On deliberation, I suggest the first order of business would be to consider whether or not the unit qualifies for a special permit for an accessory family dwelling unit.
Mr. Chairman, if I can.
Josh.
I know to close the hearing, there was a motion and it was seconded. I wasn't not Sure, I might have missed it. Did we actually have a vote?
Just to clarify, let's take a vote. I thought we did, but perhaps not. All in favor?
Might have.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Okay.
Okay, thank you for
Thank you.
clarifying, just to make sure we dotted our i's and crossed our t's.
If I can ask a procedural point, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly.
Do associates vote for movement, or
Yes.
are we just, okay. So, Josh, I would be a abstain for that.
Okay.
Thank you.
9.3 special permits, 9.3.2 criteria. Backing up, Stu and Brian, discussion whether or not the unit is appropriate to be granted a special permit for accessory family dwelling unit.
I think I see no problem with all 6 of these criteria.
Stu?
I agree.
As do I. For the record, let's just go through them. Community needs served by the proposal, as previously stated in substance, it would provide residential housing for a family displaced by the Chestnut Street apartment fires, and will provide a living residence for them with family members. Two.
I would like to also add, I believe that an important point is to allow the child to continue within the school
School
system.
system in Ashland. That's what the applicant did say, and I think that's a very cogent point.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
2, traffic flow and safety, including parking and loading. The applicant indicated that up to 6 cars can be parked there. He anticipates 4, and that there's a rather long driveway exiting onto Chestnut Street, which is a fairly large road within the town of Ashland. 3, adequacy of utilities and other public services. Town records indicate that the unit is serviced by town water and town sewer. Item number 4, neighborhood character and social structures. It's a residential neighborhood. The house in question is adjacent to the Chestnut Street apartments and is the first of a series of single-family homes along Chestnut Street. 5, impacts on the natural environment. There would seem to be no disturbance of the immediate environment around the house. And 6, potential fiscal impact, including impact on town services, tax base, and employment. It would seem that little to no impact on town services or employment in the tax base. As the applicant indicated, his tax bill will probably rise because of this. Everybody satisfied with those qualifications for the criteria?
Yep.
Conditions. What conditions do we wish to impose if we were to grant the special permit?
Everything in 7.6. And that the building permit only be issued when all the plans are properly submitted in better form than what they are now.
Approved by the building commission.
Okay. just going back to, I'm sorry, Stu, go ahead.
Can we just relook at, what did the building inspector say he wanted?
4 things,
Huh?
right here. He said he wanted architectural plans,
A reason for the relief, square footage, and a
plot plan.
plot plan. Reason for relief is set forth in the application and will be made note in our decision. Square footage is noted in the assessor's plans that were attached to the application, and the plot plan was something that has been provided by the applicant this evening, and which Mr. Christopherly did not have.
A condition that I've been thinking about concerns the egress window. I think if we have, I've never heard of it before, but I've been informed that it's part of the building code. So if I'm personally gonna vote on something like this, I want a condition to go on record to say that that area has to be cleared for egress. In other words, during snowstorms and such, the homeowner has to make sure that that area is cleared so that if there is an egress, it won't result in people being blocked by snow piled up and things of that nature. So I don't really know how to frame it in terms of a condition, but it's a concern that if I'm gonna put my name on something, I wanna know that there's no liability.
Right?
There are homes that have outswing doors onto patios, and we don't make conditions that those people shovel their decks in winter in case they have to get out of that door. There are 2 means of egress that satisfies the code, and I'm gonna let the building inspector make that determination. But according to these plans, there needs to be 2 egresses, and they're going to have 2 egresses. And I would leave it up to them how they take care of it. I don't think it's our responsibility to put that it has to be shoveled or sanded or raked in the fall. I don't think that's part of our job. But I could be wrong. I just don't see what that's part of our job.
If we make a specific condition just addressing not only it has to comply with the building code, et cetera, but that the areas of egress need to be specifically,
Well, maybe Josh can ask the building inspector what is.
well,
Yes.
but if we're going to place a condition on that, we need to decide that this evening, and we need to decide on the approximate language of it, so that, and not leave it to something that is information obtained outside the scope of the hearing and placed in the hearing decision. I mean, I think I'm comfortable with, referencing as a condition of the decision that the egresses meet with the requirements of the building department, in referring to a decision that we had made last year on a special permit for an accessory family dwelling. We had simply indicated that one condition, the applicant shall comply with any requirements of the building department. And I suggest that perhaps we can
Okay.
include, especially
I'll withdraw my
insofar
specific
as
request.
egress requirements are concerned. With that,
I think that goes without saying, that it has to be built to code.
and I think with respect to conditions, in addition to referencing section 7.6 in general, I would also suggest that we specifically highlight that the residents of the proposed accessory family dwelling unit shall be a relative of the homeowner. Also, that occupants shall comply with section 7.6.3, stating that additional family living, and then quote that section, which provides that additional family living units shall be limited to a maximum of 4 persons, and provided further that the owner of record is an occupier of the structure, which includes the accessory dwelling unit, and that no boarders or lodgers shall be allowed in either dwelling unit, and there shall be no other living unit on the lot which such accessory unit is to be located. And then the final restriction, that the applicant shall comply with any requirements of the building department, with special attention given to the means of egress. Would that suffice?
Does that work for you?
Brian, is that okay?
Yes.
Any other conditions that you think we should apply?
I think it's all in this 7.6.
Okay.
Doesn't it say that it has to be a family member?
It does, under 7.6.
Okay.
It does.
And then the 7.6.10, that it's gonna be inspected every 2 years, and, you know, you can't sell the houses like that. Yeah, so I think that's all covered.
Okay. Then I think we need to, the next order of business would then be a motion to grant Mr. De Silva a special permit to construct an accessory family dwelling unit in the basement of the home at 368
Chestnut Street.
Chestnut Street, with the following limitations, that the applicant comply with any and all
I make a motion that we.
requirements of section 7.6, and then the specific ones of, that I had discussed and went over previously.
I make a motion that we grant a special permit for the apartment to be built in 386 Chestnut Street, according to the special, according to the section 7.6 and 9.3 of the Ashland bylaws, with the condition that the building inspector receive everything that he has requested from the homeowner, being the 4 items: the plot plan, the architectural plans, the reason for relief, and the square footage. That if the building inspector receives those items to his satisfaction, that he can grant the special permit. That we grant the special permit so he can grant the building permit.
Mr. Forrestal, just simply restate the address, because I think you said 386, I think it's 368.
368, sorry guys, 368 Chestnut Street. Don't build an apartment at 386.
Okay, there's a motion made, is there a second?
I second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained? Now, formally, Josh, do we need to state our names that we each formally approve?
It is my understanding that you do not have to. It is practice,
Okay.
but I do not believe that you have to.
If it's practice, then why don't we do it?
I, Stuart Siegel, vote in favor of the motion.
I, John Trefethan, vote in favor of the motion.
I, Brian Forrestal, vote in favor of the motion.
Anything further that we need to do with respect to this? You will draft the decision?
Yes.
Okay. And notify us when the draft is, has been prepared.
Yes.
We will not communicate amongst each other, but communicate directly with Josh.
Yeah.
Each of the three of us.
Yep.
Okay. I think that concludes this matter, unless anyone else has anything further, unless I missed anything.
I do not believe you have.
Okay. Thank you very much. The hearing is concluded. End of meeting items on the agenda, staff updates and administrative matters. I will just say, I'd like to welcome our newest full member to the committee, Brian Forrestall. Brian was an associate member, and he has been appointed by the Board of Selectmen to fill the unexpired term of our former member, Tom McNulty, who resigned because he left the confines of Ashland and moved to Uxbridge. And we welcome Brian.
Thank you.
We also thank Tom for his many years of service to the town of Ashland in many different capacities, but especially as a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. But also point out to the public that we now have only 2 associate members, Simitri and Marty. We have openings for 2 additional associate members. We could definitely use your help. If you have interest, please fill out a talent bank information form with the town and contact the Board of Selectmen to let them know that you are interested. That is all I have. Are there any other staff updates or administrative matters that we need to deal with?
No.
Anybody else have anything?
I make a motion to close the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
And we thank WACA.
Yes, thank you, WACA.